They say saving one life is like saving all humanity. But let me ask you something. If a coughing skeletal boy with hollow eyes and ribs showing through his skin stretched out a shaking hand near the gates of private Lagos hospital, would you stop? Would you even touch him? Would you lower your window? Or would you roll it tighter? No, most people wouldn't. They'd cover their nose. They'd whisper to their children, "Don't look, he has disease." They'd walk faster, as though poverty itself could leap onto their designer clothes. But that morning in Victoria Island, as the city's elite walked in and out of the shining glass doors of St. Nicholas Hospital, the richest widow in Lagos stood frozen, and the only person near enough to catch her eyes was a dying boy everyone else avoided. Her name was Aisha Bello, daughter of a cocoa magnate, widow of a shipping tycoon, owner of half the real estate in Enkay. People called her the Iron Widow, but that day she wasn't iron at all. She was just a woman, standing in silence, watching death in front of her. The boy couldn't have been older than 10, maybe 11. His shirt clung like paper. His lips were cracked, his feet bare, bleeding from the gravel, and in his eyes, not anger, not begging, just exhaustion. He swayed once, like a tree in weak wind, then collapsed, right there, in the shadow of the automatic sliding doors. The crowd gasped. Some stepped back. Others hissed, "Cholera? Don't touch him." One nurse shook her head and muttered, "No family, no payment. Leave him." But Aisha didn't move. Her fingers gripped the diamond-studded handle of her Hermes bag until her knuckles went white. She heard her late husband's voice in her memory, harsh and clear. "Don't waste time on strays. Lagos is full of them. They're born, they die. That's their fate." For years, she had obeyed that philosophy. But that morning, staring at the boy twitching on the pavement, coughing blood into his hands, something inside her cracked. Her heels clicked against the tiles as she stepped forward, and before the guards could block her, she knelt down. His name, he whispered between coughs, was Samuel. He didn't have a father, didn't remember a mother, didn't even know his own surname. He had lived around Ojalegba Bridge, with the smoke of roasted corn mixed with the stench of open gutters. He begged when he could, stole when he had to, and slept under plastic sheets when the rain came. But for weeks now his chest had burned, his breath rattled, his body wasted. He thought he would die right there, unseen, unwanted, until her shadow fell over him. With hands that had once signed billionaire contracts, Aisha lifted his frail body. Her silk sleeves darkened with the stain of his blood and dust. "Help me," she snapped at the stunned staff. "Prepare a bed. Now." "But, madam—" "Do it, or you'll lose your job before sunset." Her voice sliced through the air like glass. The doors opened. She carried him inside herself. The doctors hesitated, murmuring about bills, about infection, about risks. But Aisha's orders were law. "Put every machine you have on him," she commanded. "Test every drop of his blood. I don't care what it costs." They obeyed. Oxygen tubes. For lines. Antibiotics. Monitors beeping. The boy's eyelids fluttered. His tiny chest rose and fell. Still fighting. Still alive. That night, Aisha sat beside his bed. Her emerald rings glimmered under the fluorescent lights as she held a cup of water to his lips. He looked at her once. Just once. And in his eyes, she saw something she had never seen in the eyes of ministers, business partners, or presidents. Trust. Pure, fragile trust. "Sleep," she whispered. "You're safe now." And for the first time in her life, Aisha Bello, the Iron Widow, felt her armor melt. 3 days later, the doctors declared him stable. They said he would survive. They said, "He is lucky, madam. Without you, he would be gone." She smiled faintly. "No," she whispered. "Without him, I would still be dead inside." But when the papers tried to publish the story, she stopped them. She didn't want cameras. Didn't want headlines about the widow and the orphan. She wanted something else. Something deeper. So she signed the forms herself. One signature. And the boy who had no surname became Samuel Bello, her son, But what happened after that shocked everyone. Because within weeks, as Lagos buzzed with gossip, Aisha discovered a truth that made her question everything. This boy she had saved wasn't just an orphan. He carried secrets in his silence, and his presence in her mansion would change her empire, her legacy, and her very soul. What was he hiding? Why had fate delivered him to her gates? And what Samuel revealed years later would shake Lagos to its core. 2 years later, Aisha Bello stood at the edge of her veranda, holding a faded teddy bear. It wasn't new. One ear was missing, the stuffing poked through the seams. Something her son could toss around the compound while guests clapped during his birthday speech. But to her, it felt heavier than gold, because a child playing under the almond tree, thin, smiling, with eyes brighter than the sun, was only alive because a woman the city mocked had chosen mercy over silence. A boy she had adopted, a boy who vanished, and never asked for thanks. "Madam," her driver walked over, voice uneasy. "There's someone at the gate. Says he knows you." Aisha barely looked up. "Name?" He just said, "Tell her I'm the boy from Ajigunal." Her heart stopped. The teddy bear slipped from her hand. She ran through the marble corridor barefoot. The moment the gate swung open, she didn't recognize him at first. Emeka was taller, still lean, still wearing simple slippers, but now his shoulders carried quiet authority. His eyes didn't flicker like they used to. He stood rooted, steady. He had a leather file in one hand, and in the other a necklace. The same necklace she had given him when the doctor said he would not survive the night. Aisha's lips trembled. "Emeka?" He nodded once. She fell to her knees. "Why did you leave?" she whispered. "I didn't leave," he said softly. "I was taken by people who wanted me gone, not to protect me, to erase me." Her throat tightened. "Who?" He looked away. "You." At first, she didn't understand. But then Emeka handed her the file, an old adoption record, and inside, in fading ink, were signatures, dates, and a single phrase stamped across every page. "Property of the Bello Foundation." Aisha flipped to the last sheet. She saw her own name, signed, stamped, sealed. She dropped the file. "What is this?" she asked. But Emeka didn't answer. He simply said, "You asked why I came back, but I came to ask why you wrote me away." That night, Aisha couldn't sleep. She dug through her late husband's safe, the foundation deeds, the land allocations, the orphanage charters, and deep in the pile, she found it, a hidden agreement from years before. The signature was hers, or so it appeared. But the terms? It transferred children, registered as orphans, to private sponsors overseas for experimentation and labor. The sponsor's name? Same foreign corporation her family had partnered with. She began to shake. She had built her reputation on mercy, on adoption, on sacrifice. But somewhere, her name had been used to trade children like currency. And the fortune from that betrayal? It funded the very foundation that made Lagos call her Mother of the Forgotten. But rarely do we see someone give away their own throne to lift up one they had once abandoned. He turned to Emeka. "Boy, do you wish to reign?" Emeka said, "I only wish for no child to sleep in garbage heaps again." Another elder asked, "Woman, do you wish to rise?" Aisha said, "Only if I can rise with the forgotten who raised me." The final queen said, "Then rise together." She lifted a small calabash bowl, and inside were 2 items, a rusted necklace and a carved wooden bangle. She placed the bangle on Aisha's wrist, the necklace back around Emeka's neck, and declared, "You will not be rulers, you will be rebuilders. The abandoned shall follow you, and the future shall call you its parents." When they returned to Lagos, the headline spread. Aisha and Emeka declared rebuilders of Ajigunal. First Time Street siblings received national honor. The boy with the necklace now leads a home for orphans. But at the shelter, life remained humble. Aisha still cooked jollof rice with her hands. Emeka still swept the courtyard. But now, there were hundreds more, and every child who entered the gate touched the necklace at the entrance and whispered, "Thank you Brother Emeka. But what happens when the past does not return as shame, but as temptation? And when betrayal crawls in not from strangers, but from your own? Will Aisha choose mercy or power? Do you believe every good deed is rewarded? That every act of kindness brings protection? It isn't always so. Sometimes kindness is repaid with knives. Sometimes patience is the only answer. But that does not mean kindness is wasted. The world is watching. The heavens are recording. And when the time comes, the time of justice, everything shifts, and that time was about to arrive. Aisha was now 9 months pregnant. She still worked in the shelter, still tied wrappers around her waist, still carried buckets of water with other women. But her eyes carried something heavier, not fear for herself, fear for her unborn child, for what the city might do when a baby is born with the blood of a disgraced dynasty and the breath of forgotten streets. One evening, she stood on the roof of the shelter and prayed, "Oh Allah, don't let me give birth to another heir. Let me give birth to a new dawn." Below, Emeka sat alone, holding an old newspaper cutting. Dying orphan boy rescued by widow of Bello family. He folded it gently, placed it in his pocket. But as the call to prayer ended, something darker entered. The betrayal came from within. Sul, the young accountant Aisha had mentored, had stolen from the shelter, not just funds, but names. He created a parallel NGO using their reputation, signed fraudulent contracts, collected donations meant for the children. When confronted, he didn't hide. He laughed and said, "You turned this place into a mosque. I just collected the zakat." Aisha's hands shook. She wanted to scream, to expose him. But Emeka stepped forward. He said, "Let him go." Aisha's voice broke. "He stole everything." Emeka's eyes shifted to her swollen belly and whispered, "Don't let your child's first lesson be vengeance." So they let Sul leave, but the harm had spread. Donors pulled away. Supplies stopped coming. And whispers grew that maybe the saints of Ajigunal weren't so pure. The children felt the hunger. The mothers panicked. The city grew silent. And Aisha went into labor. It rained heavily that night. No ambulance came. So Emeka held his sister's body as she screamed on a mat in the prayer room. The women gathered. Some sang lullabies. Others poured warm water. One recited verses of protection. Hours crawled, sweat-drenched. And just before dawn, a cry shattered the air. A baby girl. Fragile. Eyes shut, but alive. Aisha collapsed, sobbing. Not from pain. From the weight of hope. Emeka cut the cord with his own blade, washed his hands, and lifted the child. He whispered into her ear, "Welcome, daughter of mercy. You are born of dust and flame. No one can erase your name." Aisha smiled through tears. Her name is Salma. Peace. But peace was soon tested. The next day, a letter arrived. The Bello board, long corrupt, sued Aisha for defamation, accused her of forging records, demanded she surrender her shares, even tried to claim her newborn as a stain on the Bello bloodline. Emeka's fists clenched. He gathered allies, lawyers, even marched with the orphans to the courthouse steps. But Aisha stayed behind. She rocked her child and whispered, "If the world wants to erase me, let them try. But they can't erase what we've carved into hearts." And then a miracle stirred. The people rose. Not the rich, not officials, but the forgotten, former shelter kids, market women, taxi drivers, nurses. They filled social media with memories, testimonies, photos of the shelter's sacrifices. Hashtags trended. Hashtag Selma deserves peace. Hashtag Aisha is truth. Even embassies noticed. Within weeks, the lawsuit collapsed. The Bello board went silent. But another letter arrived. This one, not from courts, from abroad. An international coalition, the Rebuild Circle, offered to fund 10 shelters across West Africa in Aisha's name. But only if she shared her story globally. If she became visible. She hesitated, then looked down at Salma, who smiled in her sleep. Aisha whispered, We endure the fire, so the next ones walk in cool shade. 6 months later, Aisha stood on a world stage. In Geneva, thousands sat before her. She wore no jewels, no crown, only a plain white gown, and Salma in her arms. Her final words went viral. I was saved by a dying boy. I was betrayed by my own blood. I was broken by lies. But I rose, not alone. I rose with hands once despised. If you feel invisible, you are not forgotten. If you are abandoned, you are chosen. And mercy still lives in you. Back in Lagos, the shelter walls were painted anew. On the gate, a plaque was fixed. House of Salma, where the forsaken bloom. And Emeka, he accepted a title. Not minister, not president. Simply, Uncle Emeka. He never left the shelter. He built swings for children, told them bedtime tales. And each night, little Salma, now toddling, would curl against him and ask, "Tell me the one where you saved Mama." He would always smile. "No, tell the one where Mama saved me." So if you think kindness is wasted, it isn't. If you think prayers echo unheard, they don't. And if you think saving one soul can't rewrite the world, you are mistaken. Because God sees, history remembers, and legacy always finds its home. If this story reached you, don't scroll away. Comment Salma. If you believe mercy is stronger than revenge, share this with someone who has ever felt unseen. Tell us, has a stranger's kindness ever saved you? Your story might be the next flame that lights the dark.